that lampshade is.
Hey everybody, welcome to this Monday Masterclass, the funny side of marketing with the wonderful Chris Kenworthy. Thank you for joining, everybody. We got a few people watching now, so we're going to give a couple of minutes just for everybody to join the call. So while we are doing the joining, does everybody want to just share where they are dialing in from? So I'm down here in a small cupboard in Brighton. I'm in a co-working space today and it's too noisy to be outside, so I'm in a tiny small booth, which is not as fun as my normal next to my window in my office. How about you, Chris? Where are you based at the moment?
Well, there's a story. I'm in a dusty mausoleum to a guy that died about 10 years ago. And that's not a sad thing. It's full of very strange things like these, like doilies and stuff. So it's the end.
I think that's when you
is it not a doily?
Breastfeeding. Oh, I thought that was one of those things that when you're breastfeeding.
Can you see the dust?
You put down your bra and then
I'm at the in-laws' house. My mother-in-law's mother, so my wife's grandmother, and it's her fella years ago, but the house hasn't been touched, and it's frozen in time in about 1992. So you can imagine the colour schemes that's going on, and it's a fascinating realm of revisiting your childhood if you grew up in the 90s. But that wasn't the answer you wanted, was it? You wanted.
I like it.
I'm in East Sussex, and the weather is slightly damp. Over to you, Francis.
Thanks, Chris. I'm in North London. I'm upstairs in my loft, and it's quite nice outside. Actually, it's kind of it looks like a John Constable painting, as if I'm looking out over Hampstead Heath, and enjoying the pastoral idyll that is a kind of has been raining and now it's a vibrant green, kind of peaceful. We were talking about middle class just now, weren't we?
Yeah. What's the most middle class thing you've got? We picked up in front of us. I managed to get a candle, whatever you call these lanterns.
Love that. Classic.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. We were thinking of what we can ask everyone in the chat. Maybe some people in the chat can actually help us with that, because normally we ask where you're dialing in from, which is a nice way to start the chat. But I was wondering whether there's any other good questions that people might have that would be a great way to kick off a crowdcast. So if you were doing a crowdcast, people, what's this, Lucy? I've got a smoothie middle class drink, love it. So I want to know, what is the most middle class question that you could ask in a chat if you were running a crowdcast? And then meanwhile, we're also thinking about a nice poll that we can ask you all. So something where there's sort of binary answers, a yes or a no, or a black or a white, or a
multiple choice is always good, but
multiple. Did you say we could have multiple choice?
We can have multiple choice. I can give you lots of things to choose from. It just can't be free-form answers is the thing with the poll.
It's not a free form. What musical instrument? Oh, Francis, that's fabulous.
Very good.
What musical instruments did you learn as a child? I'd like to hear the answers to that one.
I had 2 piano lessons and was then encouraged to take up the drums.
Piano and drums.
That's piano for people with learning difficulties, isn't it, basically?
Yeah, basically it was like...
Oh, lovely.
So
they're all coming in now. Fabulous.
Yeah.
What plant milk do you have? No, so here's one thing that really annoys me.
Fabulous, Lucy. Fabulous.
Lucy's on fire.
It's got to be Oatly barista edition.
It's
only
oat for me.
Who else? What I want to know is, does anyone else here, when they're getting their flat white with Oatly, with oat milk, do they have to understand which oat milk it's going to be?
Yeah.
Otherwise, they're not going to order it with oat milk, because I don't know about anyone else, but I don't want a flat white with Alpro pseudo barista oat milk. Thank you very much.
It's white. It's white water.
I think I've got the question. The question is, what fashionable intolerance or allergy have you got? Because that's all the rage now, isn't it?
It's all the rage.
He's only saying that because he knows my child has got 4 allergy groups.
I'm only saying that because I can't eat dairy without shitting my pants. That's why I'm asking.
By the way, if you were here for clean language, you're in the wrong place.
Oh,
And
yeah,
also,
sorry.
if you're here not to hear about periods, Arab-Israeli conflict, what else do we say we can't talk about here? I feel like I'm stuck behind those people.
Talking
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I hope that's
Take
not
that
too
as a
Go
hint.
northern and southerner thing as well, couldn't it, today? What
We've got a
else?
good
Menopause.
distribution there. We've got Francis representing the middle, and then Chris representing the north, and I'm very much representing the south coast. So,
I'm not quite the middle, thank you. Although,
well,
is anyone from the Midlands here?
I mean, yeah, you're
I
more
did
middle.
study in the Midlands, so
There you
I'm
go.
all right to talk about the Midlands, because you can only talk about stuff that you have a personal relationship with, so I feel like I can kind of go there with Birmingham.
I mean, I have been north of Watford a couple of times, so that's technically the north, isn't it?
So what we're talking
Have we got
about
any
now is,
northerners here? Have we got any people who shop in Asda or Morris? Do you have them? You don't have them down here. It's all.
yeah, the thing is, down here, if you go to Morrison's, it's going to be the one in Camden, which is now really trendy. So what happens is things like Morrison's reinvent themselves for Camden, and it becomes a whole other beast.
Yeah.
Love a good charity.
There's also
though.
the only
in
McDonald's in the
Wolverhampton and
country to
even-
not have coloured
Oh.
branding in Hampstead. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
Sorry, what's that about Hampstead?
The McDonald's in Hampstead is the only one in the country that doesn't have external McDonald's branding.
I think it's black sign.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like a very nice shishi sign.
It's incredible.
Yeah, everything in Hampstead, in our high
It's-
street in Hampstead, it has to be redesigned. We don't do what everyone else in
No,
the country
exactly.
has. Thank you. Oh hey, my husband's here. Fab. What oh, you're right, Rudy. McDonald's is not there anymore in Hampstead High Street. Thank you. It's
Well.
now a pan quotidienne, isn't it, husband?
Is that owned by McDonald's? Did they just sub it out? Probably.
It's McDonald's for
Pan
posh people.
quotidienne,
Isn't it?
Yeah,
owned
exactly.
by McDonald's, brilliant.
Probably. I mean, a lot is.
Hey,
Anyway,
Lucinda, you're from Birmingham. Amazing. Where do you live in Birmingham? I want to know.
We've got
I
Ellie in
lived in
Manchester.
Selly Oak.
Lucy's in Bury. Do you know Ramsbottom, Lucy? Who we got? I saw somewhere else up there.
Edgbaston.
Lucinda, that's not really
Nice.
Birmingham, though, is it? Edgbaston doesn't really count. That's like posh Birmingham.
Turf wars going on here, look.
Oh God! Right. Basically, what is going to happen today is we're going to be talking to Chris. This is kind of what happens when you talk to Chris, though, because the best thing is not to have an agenda. You know, it's just seeing where it all goes, really. But also, we've talked today about starting with the headline or the punchline of a joke and going backwards. So, on that basis, I'm going to put all the pressure on you, Chris.
If I'm the punchline, how did we get here? Is that the?
Right. I feel like I've done most of the talking. Right. What's happening, Chris?
What's happening right now in my life?
Yeah.
Well, I've realised I've let go of the anxiety I had about the internet connection, which may drop out at some point. And you texted me just before we came on, Francis, said, "How are you getting on?" And that broke the loop, and I'd realised I was trying to manage the internet connection stability as a way of projecting my anxiety about and nerves about talking today. I am actually really excited, but I've basically given up trying to fix the internet because I can't. I get it.
So
yeah.
Are you saying that the best way of not thinking about your anxiety is to do something technical? Whenever you feel those feelings coming up, what do you do DIY, don't you? I mean, do you find yourself often sort of moving away from the feelings and doing something practical? Is that a thing that you do?
It's habitually, yeah, I can do, yeah, but is it the best way? Absolutely not, because you end up being on your own in a basement for 3 years, just renovating it to sort of avoid facing all the big questions in your life, like I did. Like, what do you want to do with your life now that you are 40? So yeah, habitually, you do fall into that. Sometimes you catch yourself distracting on things that don't matter, but there's that level of awareness now where I can see it and I can go, oh, and actually laugh about what I was trying to do. And I enjoy tinkering with things, and that's fine. I enjoy fannying around with bits and bobs to get them working. That's just who I am. The distinction now is that it's not routers that I want to fanny around with and figure out how they work and help them. It's people's brains, which is infinitely more difficult, as these lovely coaches who are here today will know, I hope, I expect.
There's no firmware update you can apply.
You can't
just
reboot
resolve it. Yeah. There's not a patch you can install.
No. they you press the button with a router, you know what it's going to do. You press a button with a human, you're going to get one thing 1 minute, you're going to get something very different the next. Yeah.
What happened when you reboot? I'm not very technical, but I'm just saying Peter's been rebooted a few times. When you reboot something, because we're going to go with this metaphor for a bit, does it wipe out everything that was done before, or does it kind of remember what happened before and then? Anyone here good at this kind of thing? I'm thinking about how the human brain does rebooting help. Oh look, Lucy's techie, isn't she? Taking my husband to tech support before.
Yeah.
Tech support. Only remember the coherent bits. That's good programming, isn't it? You can program yourself, I guess, to remember the useful bits, and then.
Peter, you're talking about factory defaults. That's what it's in it. Resetting back to factory defaults, right?
Yeah. Restore the default settings.
Yeah.
That's right. Nepal earthquake. Oh yeah, of course you're in an earthquake. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yeah.
Do you say cache or cash?
Cash.
It's cash.
Is it cash?
I said cache for years and years and years, and I worked in IT. It's really embarrassing. So, yeah. Cash.
Yeah. You know, in the IT crowd where they give her a box that contains the internet. Have you ever seen that? They give her this box that contains the internet and they tell her not to drop it or not to do anything with it because otherwise she'll break the internet. That's basically what I hear every time someone says cache. I'm just like, welcome to the internet. It's like, it's one of those weird words that should be pronounced cache, but isn't because Americans decided how to pronounce it.
Oh.
Rich just said computers get slow because of all the unwanted apps that are downloaded. Yeah, right. Old habits, patterns of thinking.
Yeah.
I love the computer analogy with humans. It works quite well to a point.
Where does it stop working?
Good question.
Where does the computer analogy stop working with people? Yeah, I think you can peer inside a computer and you can track. You know, we were talking before about tracing the way where the joke came from. It's like tracing where the thought came from. That is so. It's just not possible. The circuitry's not hardwired. It's not. You know, and
it's quantum.
You can't. For years and years, I worked in IT and I was a systems analyst, and I was obsessed with working out the way things tick. You know, the way they work, trying to understand that as a system. But you can't view humans in isolation, and you can't peer inside and work out how they function based on their circuitry and their components and stuff because you can't see them. And it's why I chose to become a coach. I just like a challenge, I think.
There's something also about like the sort of evidence for something having happened that I'm thinking about here. With humans, if we don't write stuff down or record stuff, then it's just someone's memory or hearsay as to whether or not something actually happened. Whereas with a computer and with marketing, with just general stuff that's out there, it's easy to say no, that did or didn't happen. I'm just going to turn off my WhatsApp, which was a bit of an error. I left that one on. Go away. Yeah, so there's something nice about not having a computer-like memory that means we're 100% sure of whether something did or didn't happen, because the second guessing of something is where it becomes quite funny sometimes, isn't it? But how I was just going to say an un-PC word, but how much can I rely on my I don't know if it's intelligence or memory to kind of serve me well in this moment of interpreting what's happened to me or where I'm coming from. Whereas with a computer, you've got this kind of ability to track what's happened.
Computers don't make mistakes either, do they?
Do they? Again, don't.
Well, if they do, they're entirely predictable. Whereas human beings will keep making the same mistakes over and over and over and over again.
Will we? Does that happen?
I do. Yeah, of course you do. It's part of what makes us brilliant, isn't it?
What percentage of you is making the same mistakes again and again? And what percentage of you is iterating in a positive way each time you make a mistake? That's a good poll for you there, Simon.
Yeah, there you go.
I think it's quite interesting to think that, like Chris saying there, that you just make the same mistakes over and over again. And I wonder whether that being true, do you just get better at learning that you're going to make that mistake, so you plan the outcome better so it has less impact? Is that how we evolve past those mistakes? Do we just get better at building those mistakes into our day-to-day lives, so therefore we can kind of adapt to them.
What Lucy just said, I make the mistakes quicker. I think that's to your point, really, isn't it?
Yeah. And also going back to your point about computers not making mistakes, I think that computers never make mistakes. It's just humans have unrealistic outcomes of what they thought the computer was going to do. So therefore, when it doesn't happen, they blame the computer for making the mistake, when in fact the computer, it's impossible to make a mistake because it's not making a decision, is it? It's just ones and zeros.
It's a bit like the background of your room. That's how I imagine what a computer looks like on the inside.
Yeah, I am actually inside a computer in some ways. It's a very odd room.
A bit like in Willy Wonka.
The problem is sitting in the chair. Oh, that's a fantastic, yeah. So I worked in a place once, and they had a phrase which was that the error had occurred between the keyboard and the chair. So what's in between the keyboard and the chair? It's the person, right? Whenever there was an error with the computer, they're like, yeah, the error's definitely occurred between the keyboard and the chair there.
Oh, that's funny, because where I went there was that thing of being in the chair in coaching. Maybe Chris, you can talk about that concept a little bit as a coach. What does that mean to you?
What, being in the chair, sitting in relation to computers?
No, isn't there a concept in, someone help me out here, the concept of being in the chair in coaching?
Oh, chair work, your perspectives.
Yeah. Can you talk about chair work?
It's all putting a chair in the room, isn't it, or two chairs, and imagine getting the people to move around the chairs to see the same problem from different positions. So you say, sit there, sit opposite yourself. What do you see in yourself? And then move it to the other chairs. What do you see in the other person? And you have another. You stand away from the chairs. What do you see in the two people sat down? And you can do a third or a fourth one, etc. Off topic? I don't know.
No, totally on topic, because that's what I say. What I'm saying is that, when you said the chair, that was where I went. So I completely forgot about my own self being the problem. I was thinking about the chair as being the kind of metaphor for solving the problem. Yeah, no, it's definitely gone deep now. Now I'm being really confusing.
Lucinda could have just been making a comment on the quality of the interviewee that you've got here, like this problem here side this chair.
Yeah.
Like the mastermind chair.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but there are 3 chairs here, so that's your stuff, isn't it? That you thought it was your chair. Yeah. You thought that out of the 3 of us here, the problem sitting in the chair was you.
Wow. Is this the funny side of marketing with coaches? There's a title at the top here, isn't there?
Pretty much.
The funny side of...
Are
we checking in?
No,
where are we going?
We could go anywhere with this. But
could go
do you
anywhere.
let's get really literal, shall we? We're talking today about the funny side of marketing for coaches. So let's break that down. So, Chris, what do you understand about that?
I just caught myself doing a serious face to answer the question. Do you want to break it down, the funny side of marketing? Good one. Well, I guess the subtext here is taking things seriously, isn't it? It's like thinking that marketing's a thing and like in its own right, and a way of doing things right, and a set of things to follow, steps that you must do, ways you must be, and all the other things people are doing. And really, it's just, I don't know, I guess there are already channels in our lives where we have a lot of fun and we talk bollocks and nonsense and we play with the things that amuse us, but they're not the channels that we're using to put out there in public for people to sort of rally around. And for me, it's a journey of that, really. Like, seagulls have already been mentioned, like those little weird little avenues that I get lost down, like writing bullshit motivation quotes and squashing faces and all these sort of weird things that I do. And I put things in boxes, and I had all that already going on. And I imagine a lot of the people here have that going on in some capacity in other aspect of their life. And it's like, all right, so these two things don't need to be in boxes. Maybe they can be conjoined into one just trunk of bullshit that is just 100% genuine and authentic, and people go, that's kind of weird. It's for me, it's not for me. And, they join along, they take a seat on the bus and ride that's kind of where I'm at with it, is how am I integrating those things I'd once put in boxes into just one coherent, consistent vomit in public.
It's funny, isn't it? 'Cause we talk about vomiting, don't we? And we talk about it's authentic and or vulnerable and or honest about a degree to which you should or shouldn't be vomiting. But I think you're talking about something else. You're talking about accepting other sides of yourself, which you may not think are relevant, or the things that people may not be able to identify with because they're very nuanced and particular to you. But I think there's a connectivity in nuanced, sort of subjective, personal things that are really bizarre that no one else has. So you've got your birds and squash faces, but I'm trying to think what mine is. But we all have our versions of it. I think mine's probably the karaoke thing that I do when I'm quite tired, and I go onto YouTube and then I Google a song and then the karaoke version of it, and then I have to sing into the remote control over the instrumental stuff. And it's like, how can I share that as part of my part of my marketing with the world? The honest bit of me that you don't see, like actually that I'm quite skilled at, even if I say so myself.
So who's that person wanting to sing though? Who's that person who does it in private maybe? Who and how do we get her to show up? You know, that's what I'm curious about.
Yeah, what you want me to tell you now, or you just
why not
hypothetically? I mean, I did sing. I sang in choirs. I did theatre studies. I've got a lovely soprano voice, and my children love it when I do karaoke for them. And there's something of a bodily experience around singing for me though as well. You know, sometimes I just feel I have to sing because I can't breathe, and it helps me to breathe. And it's often at the end of the day when I've been looking after the two kids, but it's a way of involving them. And I don't know how I can bring that into my marketing, but there's something of I just need to which is the thing I think of when I think of you doing that through what you do on Instagram sometimes. Just kind of being yourself, and it's a different side of you, and it's really creative, and it's a bit tangential and unrelated to what you do on paper, and yet is so relevant. Yeah,
well, it's all related, isn't it? Simon, what do you do in the privacy of your own home that you would prefer not to be out in public, but possibly could be a good vehicle for connecting to like-minded people?
I do. I suppose I sort of. Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think of something when you were saying that. I was thinking there isn't much that I don't already sort of share about, in the sense that, like, when I'm not working, what I do to sort of switch off in the same way that Francis is talking about swimming is like I'll do like kayaking or sea swimming or go for a walk or something. But I generally sort of share that sort of stuff anyway. But in terms of like, I don't really have a creative outlet in the same way. I don't have like I'm not like in an amateur dramatics thing or anything. Do you know what I mean? And I'm famously bad at drawing and painting. So I guess I could buy a pottery wheel. That's probably the next step, isn't it? If we're talking about middle class creative journeys, I'm probably only a couple of years away from a pottery wheel and a Shopify store.
I love the idea of you being really bad at drawing and therefore sharing your drawings with us.
Have you heard of Dave? Have you heard of David Shrigley? He's
yes.
Just, terrible. That's the fun
of it. A fair point. Yeah, maybe that's
to share things you're terrible with. It's definitely funnier than sharing something that you actually think you're good at. Boring.
That's a fair point. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's about identifying something that you may not be so great at. But we're getting into the territory of should you overshare, and but that is kind of where we were always going to end up with, in regards to talking to you, Chris. Where we were going to end up.
I think oversharing's a tricky one, isn't it? Like I read a quote somewhere ages ago about there's a fine line between being authentic, being yourself, and just being an obnoxious, loudmouth, annoying. It's risky territory in it, but I think I'm compelled to say we have to make those mistakes to learn what that boundary is, and I have. not necessarily in my marketing online, but in real life of just going too far with things. And it's a cross you bear, isn't it? But yeah, oversharing.
There's sharing for someone else's benefit, and then there's sharing for your own benefit, isn't there?
Yeah.
And like when you're a coach doing marketing, when you're thinking about what you're sharing, you're doing two things. You're thinking about sharing something so that other people understand why they should work with you. And then you're sharing something because you want people to connect with you as a fellow human being. So there's the question of how much should I share in order that you can connect with me? And then there's this sort of self-serving, unconscious sharing, which is either because you can't you haven't been able to identify those boundaries yet, or there's something cathartic about sharing which you haven't worked through in terms of what that process is for you. So there's quite a lot in what sharing is, really, and the extent to which you need to share. And the thing is, there's no rules for everyone. That's the thing. We're all quite different, isn't it?
Actually, it's what your conception of being a coach is. Like I tried for a long time to just let go of being the expert advice giver. I'm not going to be a coaching Nazi here and start telling people what coaching is and isn't. But my experience, having been not a coach, just having been a consultant for so long, being the answers guy, is to let go of that. So my conception of a coach is to be more vulnerable and flawed and imperfect and spontaneous and emergent. That's my journey. I'm not saying that's what everyone else has to go on. As I live through that, people will see that and hopefully connect at some level with that. I mean, when they're in the room with me, their impressions might change or be different because it's so emergent what happens between two people. But I'd hope that there are opportunities in there where they see that I'm not, I confirm that I'm not the expert and I don't have the answer and I don't know, and I'm there with you on this one. I read a thing yesterday. It's about how did I feel going through this experience? Not what did I do, not how did I solve it. It's more about how did I feel going and what did I think going through this situation. That's enough as a thing to share. What happened after that point and how where you fixed it. That's besides the point, really. But that really helped me understand that distinction yesterday. Maybe there's something in that for your oversharing.
You're making me think about the difference between. There's almost like this frustration with marketing, which is that you want to be able. We talk about marketing as a conversation, but it isn't, because it's just you talking at the ether and hoping that you're going to get back what the other side of the conversation would look like. So the real conversation is what you're saying. It happens in the room or on Zoom. But the conversation that we're talking about in terms of doing marketing is kind of a speculative conversation. It's like you're kind of hoping that the conversation is going to come from that, or you're very responsible for shaping the conversation when you're doing your marketing. It's like there's this pressure there. I haven't thought about that before. Yeah.
There's a really good book which I'd recommend called Coaching Presence, and it has this idea of 4 different levels of coaching presence. It's not just coaching, forget coaching. It's 4 levels of presence when you're having conversations with people, and you go from being invisible, where you're just basically facilitating what the conversation that comes out, and you move right up to totally visible, where you're basically just bringing lots and lots of yourself into the conversation, and in between you've got emergent and evident, where you have different levels of involvement in the conversation. And that is a model that I'm still learning, but it helps me decide, because the whole part of it is you decide which of those levels of engagement you're at when you're in a coaching conversation, or just any conversation. How much intervention is required here, and you kind of judge it on the fly. You go, okay, I'm going to be more emergent here, or I'm going to be more evident here, so I'm going to reflect more, I'm going to say what I'm hearing, I'm going to ask more questions, I'm going to suggest other ways of looking at it, or I'm going to back off and this person needs to vomit, so I'm going to be invisible and I'm going to let them just blah, 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 blah. That's really helping me work out my coaching identity, who I am.
And are you saying that you feel that there are those 4 choices within how one does marketing, or is it that you are mindful of those 4 ways in which people might be interacting with you when you put something out there?
I guess I was just volunteering the model as a way of thinking about the market, because in the marketing you would be like the visible coach, and visible is all about just bringing loads of yourself in, challenging people, provoking them, holding people accountable, holding their feet to the fire. That's really kind of visible coaching. That's probably closer to the very interventionist coaching that a lot of people do. So that might be what's appropriate. Yeah, when you're like you said, you're on LinkedIn and Instagram and you're just putting the stuff out there and it's really personal, no one's really answering. That's probably quite visible coaching stuff, but there are levels below that where you can back off and be a bit more gentler. I don't know. I was offering it to people.
Yeah. Different ways of showing up, but still having a conversation. You can still be doing interacting. It's just that it can look different.
It's this notion that there's only one authentic. You know what I mean? There's only an authentic me. Well, there isn't. I don't know about you, but I'm a mess. There's all sorts of versions of me that you get, and that's okay.
I think that's also one thing that a lot of marketing bullshit that comes up a lot that I see is just what they call it's either like the conveyor belt or the hamster wheel of content, and it's just this need to continually be showing up and going, this is me, this is my lunch, this is me sitting in the chair, this is me walking to sit in the chair before I have my lunch. And it's like that level of like posting about yourself just isn't helping anybody. If anything, it's just distracting you from what you should be doing. And really, nobody wants to know that level of detail. But a lot of social sort of marketing experts will tell you that you just need to be continually sharing or putting yourself out there. And I think partly what I'm hearing from you saying about those different levels of conversation is like, well, actually, do you even need to show up that much to be effective? Is it more effective to show up once a week with some, fantastic wisdom that makes people really think or consider or stop or pause or do something or try something, rather than overshare and be drawn into that hamster wheel? Because I think one thing that is always a reminder I have to make is that every time you pick up your phone, you're in a battle with, billions of dollars worth of scientific brain engineering, and you either win or you lose. If every time you open Instagram, you open TikTok, it's you versus the algorithm, and it's how long can they keep that dopamine firing to show you more ads to keep that open. And sometimes in that battle, you win an extra bonus point because you see something really meaningful, or you see something that really makes you smile, or a friend that you haven't seen in weeks has suddenly popped up and said, you do occasionally get a real win. But I think it's good that we're all honest and recognise that most of the time it's cats falling off stuff.
Everything that you just said, replace social media algorithms with ego, and that's nice. It's the same thing, right?
Yeah. Wow.
And every coach will know that. Every coach will know that when you're talking to someone, your ego just wants you to butt in and go, oh yeah, I know that, or this is what I do, this is what and you're constantly battling against your ego. And it's the same thing, it's the same battle, right? Possibly. I don't know what people think. Have you battled with your ego?
I think there's definitely one thing that a lot of people have to either rein in or summon up in order to get to that first bit of sharing, because either you've got your egos going like, nobody wants to know that, don't talk about that, come on now, everybody already knows this, let's not go anywhere near that app with that idea. Or it's like, hey everybody, I'm just walking to a thing to do a sit on a chair to talk about a thing. It's just it's way too much. But I love your linking of the ego and the algorithm to mix those two as being head to head. The algorithm loves the ego.
Yeah, it talks you into stuff and talks you out of stuff. Yeah. Fancy you grinning away through all that.
But we can play it, so we can own it.
Yeah, I like the gambling element, like the versus element. Is it versus? Yeah.
I really I watched that is it The Social Network? No, not The Social Network, that's one about Zuckerberg, isn't it? It's The Social Dilemma. I don't know if you've seen it on Netflix, The Social Dilemma. It's absolutely fascinating. I'd highly recommend everybody watches it. There's a bit where they're sort of dramatizing what the algorithm is doing, and it's essentially these three people stood with this like a first person view of a phone feed, and all three of them are fighting to put the content in.
Oh yeah.
And there's like one of them is the ads server, the other is the interest server, and then the other is the kind of the sort of the addiction server. And one of them is like, yeah, but if we show them that now, then we won't have anything to pull them back in 2 minutes. So let's wait till he closes the app, and then he presses a button on the app, and then like the human on the other side of the screen closes the app, and then he's like, okay, we've waited 30 seconds, push, and then it does a push notification, app's back open, and he's in. He's like, yeah, and it's all about how much they can get you to interact with it. And that dramatization really sort of put a real human side to what is essentially just maths, but it really gave it that sort of element to me of like, actually, yeah, this is what we're battling. And I feel like if you're trying to be authentic in the way that you're bringing a message to that platform, it feels like you are competing against these other factors. So if you're going to show up, you may as well show up with something that you really want, you know, you're proud of, or adding value, or doing something fun with. At least you could at least enjoy it, because if you really don't enjoy it, then it feels like a real waste of everyone's time.
But I think it's a balance between having a really nice time. So, for example, I think what Rich has just posted is brilliant, because it's made me think about the fact that I'm having a really nice time. But there are some people in the audience who actually want to know some tangible things, like, where can you find Chris? What does he actually do? Who are his clients? How does he attract them? And I sometimes think, gosh, like, I'm having so much fun with my marketing. You know, if something lands, then amazing, you know, and like it's a really serendipitous karmic thing for me that the right people find me, and I rely on that. But then there's that strategic thing of, no, we're having a nice conversation, but at some point we probably need to talk about what Chris does, how he finds his audience, and who they are, and if he likes them. So thanks for that, Chris. Because I think with marketing, you know, it is that balance of having a lovely time, but then remembering that you actually have an agenda. So the agenda now is we're going to make sure that we market what Chris does, and he can talk about who his clients are and blah-de-blah to answer Rich's question.
Do you want me to answer Rich's question?
I want you to answer the question, because there are some people, when you're doing marketing, there'll be people who read your stuff who kind of don't really care about anything other than the answers to how can I work with you? Who are you? What do you do? How do you work? And like Rich has just kindly reminded me that is why we're all here. So let's answer that one.
Do you attract a certain kind of client, Chris? Organically, yes. I think the whole niche thing, Francis will know, having had discussions with me when I was a little tangled up in the whole niche thing. I think ironically, the more I let go of that pressure to find my niche and find my people, the more emergent it actually became and resolved itself. I don't know whether there's an answer in that for you, but yeah, I think I do. I've had 2 clients through a colleague from the past, part of the network, good friend. We get on, same sense of humour, same outlook kind of thing, you know, outspoken, etc. Gobshite. And because she's my tribe, they're her tribe, so therefore by extension they're probably my tribe. So it was the word of mouth thing worked in that respect. So do I have a certain type of client? I probably do, but I'm aiming for self-selecting. I'm just going to be more of this and use that as a signal, a rallying point for people, and let them filter themselves. How do people generally find you? Really I have annoying. Had people, yeah, really no. They sort of like, I mean, they find me a bit weird, sometimes a bit dark. I can do the professional thing, but it doesn't always work. I guess people get impressions of who I am from my writing and stuff. People found my blogs. A lady found me and she was like, oh, here's a guy who knows what he stands for, and he knows how to say it, and doesn't care about what people think. And I kind of threw a little bits of that true, but again, that was a persona. I was probably my writing persona at the time, my blogging thing, which is this irreverent character who kind of speaks his mind and isn't, like scatological, smutty, sexual references to sort of imagery and that kind of thing. And that does filter out some people, but what I have found is that, like, even if you think you're being real, like, too far authentic, probably even in the oversharing territory, Francis, is that, people will filter out some of that stuff and they will form their own perception of who you are, and if the objective is just to get in a conversation with them and work out what the chemistry was, which is what I think Lucy mentioned earlier on, that's enough, really. Your marketing can be imperfect as long as, there's enough information in there for them to start filtering out the bits that aren't appropriate or relevant, which there's probably quite a lot in my gump. Was there any wisdom in that?
There was. I think Rich probably was asking literally how people find you, i.e. through channels.
Social media, Twitter, I'm quite active on there. LinkedIn, I'm quite active on there.
But do people find you? Because you said at the beginning it's my network, right? So are people finding you through social media, or are you just showing up on it even though you actually get most of your clients from your network?
Well, at the moment I do, but that's always in a perpetual state of flux. Could you phrase that into a direct question again, please? Sorry, my mind just wandered. Does that? I was thinking of seagulls eating chips. Go on.
Fine. No, good feedback for me in terms of how interesting what I say is. When I talk to you, think about
boring the shit out of me. Come on.
Chips. Yeah. No, I mean, I'm glad that I like our friendship. You can be honest. So what I was saying.
It terrifies me that you thought I was actually being honest. Then when I said you're boring the shit out of me,
I literally always take everything everyone says as being what they are thinking. I've got a bit of a weird inability to see humour, which is funny, isn't it? No, what I was saying, and I'll rephrase it into a useful question, is if you've just said that most of the clients that you have now have come from first, second, third degree connections, and yet you're doing all this showing up on Twitter and Instagram and all the rest of it, I'm interested in why bother doing that if historically most of the business you've got has been from people that but then you kind of answered that by saying, but that's always in flux and people may not always be serving me connections and I can't rely on that, which is why I show up on social media in a sort of way that mirrors who I am, so that when people want to sort of check me out and make sure I'm legit, they can see that what I am on social media is what they're getting in real life. Because if I'm in a session with, I can't imagine, like, if I was in a coaching session with you, I might think, God, what, like, is this for real? Does he do this? Is this like how he is? And then I might want to go and check you out on social media and be like, oh yeah, no, that is kind of who he is. That's how he rolls. Okay, I feel like this is a process and a method that I'm part of. So you're kind of showing your workings, aren't you, out loud?
Yeah, I guess. It's sort of a holistic thing, you know what I mean? And it depends what game you're playing with the marketing. It's just a long game, it's a steady kind of accumulation of a body of work that people will then look at holistically. And I know they do this. They see a little bit of me on Twitter and they see that, and they may have read a blog and they'll see me associated on the social networks with such a person who's an influencer or not. I sound like I'm well connected. I'm absolutely not. I'm trying to build a better network, but they'll see me through association and they might hover around my stuff like that. And it's like that whole imperfectness of it and the filters thing, that you have no idea which part of you they're going to see or find. And when they do find it, a tidbit here, a tweet here, you've no idea how they're going to connect the dots in their own head. It's like I don't have any control over any of that, so I may as well just have fun with it and let them draw their own conclusions and assumptions. And when you're in a session with me, like, as the coaches will know, a lot of the time you spend more time listening and helping reflect, and your focus is on them. But occasionally the gobshite who shows up when I'm doing my blogging, he'll probably be there at the start of the session, he'll be thinking, right, how do we loosen this person up? How do we get rapport? You know, like the other day I was with a lady who had some pink trainers on, and then I noticed she had a pink wristband and a pink notebook, and I was just like, oh, you know, I was observing all this, and I was saying, it's like, you know, coordinated, and I was saying all this, and she was like, no, it's an accident. I said, well, you could have had that compliment, you've just thrown it away. So you know what, I don't want to coach you anymore, because, you know, just playing around with that sort of thing. And it's like, the way I see it is just if you can just knock them off balance a little bit in a kind way. And the reason is because they'll come in there wanting to be a certain way or whatever, and you have to kind of shake them up a little bit out of the way of thinking. But hopefully we're getting around to answering Richard's question here. But
I think we are, and I think it's making me want to ask you two things. Like, can you talk about what you and I talked about when the kind of subverting your serious side thing was born, and sort of where that came from? But also, can you talk about how it was to try and market yourself prior to the subvert your serious side theme, in a way? Like, how did that feel? Maybe start with the first one, like the subvert your serious side kind of packaging, right? How do you feel? How can you describe how that evolved?
It came out of its own accord. It was in there probably all the time. So Subvert Your Serious Side is a bunch of workshops where I'm fucking about with ideas about trying to get people to engage with darker stuff or serious problems in a way that, you know, that just diffuses the tension on it. That's the purpose behind it. And there's a bunch of activities around role play, and that's all very much an experiment. But it came out of its own accord. I just thought, fuck it, I wonder what will happen if I do this. So that emerged. I did it. I scheduled it. I did it, and we've had one or two. You know, one was really good fun. One didn't quite go to plan, but you know, the third one's upcoming. And man, it's just another experiment, really. Did you ask? There was a question tacked at the end.
It was more like having discovered a way.
Yeah.
I think what you're describing is how you can do coaching and show up in marketing in a way that you feel is very much you. So I was interested in what it felt to be trying to do coaching and marketing without necessarily having identified and embraced that side of you, I guess.
Yeah. Reaching around for a channel. That's what it was. I was reaching around for some vehicle or something, some way of it's that whole thing about, you know, marketing is, if you can combine the marketing with demonstrating your ways of being. I'm doing a Venn diagram here. I'm a lot like the James Bond title, but you know, I mean, if you can channel that you're onto a winner, really. If you can find some way of exemplifying how you are and how you show up and how you behave and what you're interested in and what you want to talk about, which is what the Subvert Your Serious Side workshops and the direction they're going in, you know, improv and comedy and stuff like that. Who knows where it'll go? It's still very early days, but at least there's, you know, a channel through which I can explore those themes, and there's a way of me learning in public, and it's a lens, it's a channel, it's a vehicle, it's something that neatly has some size and shape to it. And I think for so long, like to come back to your question, for so long I've lacked that and not known what that is, possibly more because of doubting myself and second guessing what is or isn't appropriate or is and isn't a right way of doing it. And of course there is no right way or wrong way of doing it. There's just, how can I have fun with this and play about with it a little bit? That's where that's coming from. So it's helped in that respect.
It's making me think about something that I thought we'd kind of banned as a subject today, which was what we're calling quoting. So it's where you've got a coach quote. Quoting is a hashtag that we kind of talked about last week, which is a bit mean. But it's when you see a quote that makes you feel slightly cringe. But what you're talking about is having a metaphor. It's having a sort of visual framework or a sort of other framework from which you can talk about things that are important to you. And you're talking about the kind of subversion and the sort of theatre as being this kind of metaphor to then talk about some really serious stuff, or framework to do some really serious work. And I'm thinking about the kind of quotes that people put out there, and often, you know, they're kind of juxtaposed with images to invite us to see a metaphor from a visual reference point as a kind of kind reflection of what we might like to be thinking about in terms of ourselves. So that I'm afraid I'm comparing what you do with coaching, which is to say, take something else and use it, repurpose it for the sake of helping people feel closer to you, because there's kind of a connection point. And the subverting your serious side bit of you is a really great way of getting people to see that they have a very close contact point with you very quickly, because we can all identify with, you know, being very hard on yourself and then giving yourself a bit of a break, and that feeling that comes up when you sort of either kind of just laugh at yourself or kind of enter into this other theatrical world of exploration and kind of child play, which is what I think about when I think about some of your workshop frameworks, and I really enjoy that kind of playful element of it. So do you see what I'm saying? I'm kind of thinking about the ways in which people automatically, without even thinking about it, because I'm concerned that people listening to this are going, right, I need to think about what my equivalent to Chris's comedy is, you know, and I've then got to invent this playground that is a metaphor, and I've got to come up with a whole marketing strategy, blah blah. But I'm just trying to show that, in fact, I think we organically, in finding images of mountains and quotes that are seemingly irrelevant but actually, oh yeah, no, that's totally relevant, are kind of offering people the idea that you can take one point of reference and it's really meaningful for another.
Well, yeah, I mean,
that was a bit of a vomit, wasn't it? Sorry about that.
It was good. No, I think, well, what came up for me was like that, yeah, that the quote, the wisdom, the quotient, as you call it, you know, it worked for some people. Misty Mountains, and, you know, life is a journey, not a destination, and all this kind of stuff. Like, yeah, okay, but, you know, there's what's going on behind that. You know, this whole thing that I'm doing is I'm learning to be more playful because I'm not instinctively playful. You know, I'm learning to be more improvisational because I'm so into preparing for things and so into just trying to control and deal with certainty. So that's the thing I'm on. So when I'm trying to subvert seriousness, I'm subverting my own as much as yours, as in the people watching it. And also, like, coming back to Richard's point about attracting a certain kind of client, yeah, the people I sort of tend to work with, they're not moved by that kind of spiritual, you know, idioms and stuff. Like, they see it and they'll take the piss out of it in the same way that I probably would, but they still want something. They still want a fix or a solution or way to do it. And I guess the workshops I'm leaning into they're a solution of sorts, but it's as much for them as it is for me. You know, like, that's my equivalent really. Is I've got a practical thing, a thing here, a doing thing. I don't know what I'm trying to say here.
No, I mean, it's great because you're basically living what Simon and I often talk about, which is, you know, I think people, back to the niching thing, I think people think of niching as kind of cutting off your nose to spite your face, but in fact it's a great way of filtering it so that you're surrounded by people that energize you, or you can work with people in the way that is going to mean you can continue to do. Because I dare say, if you're a square peg in a round hole situation, you personally, Chris, are not going to last for very long. I can't imagine you being, you know, paid a fortune, but having to do coaching in a style that's just totally not something that you want to be doing, but more to the point, having to put yourself out there and show up in a way that's just totally not you. I just can't see you. It's just not a thing. It's not sustainable for you. So your niching has been, it's almost not been a choice for you. It's kind of like, I have to be who I am, and whoever comes to me and gets it is the kind of person I want to work with. And so that's the kind of natural niching process for you.
Yeah, and that's, the marketing is becoming a vehicle for discovering that. Like, the stuff I'm increasingly posting out now, were like this kind of almost sacrificial, flawed clown type persona that sits behind everything I write. It's like, I will analyze a part of myself and laugh at the gonk who did it, you know, and what an idiot. Like, oh, well, not an idiot, but, you know, I don't judge myself, but I say, oh, he's okay, this guy who wants to do the serious thing, he's okay, but, you know, and then deconstruct it in a way. But it's not all about me, you know. I try and do it in a way that I then offer some way forward, you know. I did a podcast where I talked to someone about this kind of thing, and we're not alone. People like us, that kind of thing. That's the.
I think there's also different.
Becoming a coach. Sorry, Simon. I was just going to ask it on the thing of how has coaching sort of brought your level of consciousness to being kind to yourself. Like, do you now understand, having done coaching for a while, are you now more, you talk about not giving yourself a hard time, like how's your coaching practice actually helped you to be kinder to yourself in this regard, do you think?
Yeah, because you bring in your imperfect self into the room, you know. It helps you channel your empathy and compassion, and you have to tune into yourself more. So yes, undoubtedly it's like a great vehicle for people like me who are, you know, probably fundamentally insecure at some level, but ultimately you're interested in exploring other parts of themselves and have realized that you're a whole. You know, you've got all the things you need already in there, but how you channel them and how you work with them and how you get them out there, that's the thing we're on. Simon?
I was just going to say, I thought it's interesting that you've got to me, what I'm hearing from what you're saying is that it's like you've found a way of having fun whilst also experimenting and learning and attracting the kind of people you want to work with. And the way you've done that is with your event. But what I was going to add here was that, you know, that could also be podcast, it could be a YouTube channel, it could be Instagram Reels, it could be a blog, it could be, there's all number of ways that may manifest itself. For lots of other coaches here, they may find that actually they're thinking, oh yeah, do you know what, I've always really wanted to just like have conversations with people, and then it's like, well, that'd make a perfect podcast. Or it might be a kind of, do you know what, I've always thought I'd give my hand, you know, give it a go doing these little videos I've got, and I'm not sure if anybody would watch it. And it's kind of like, well, actually, if you enjoy doing it, then why not give it a go? Because I think if you enjoy doing it, the fact that you enjoy doing it and are passionate about it will come out in whatever you choose to do. And I think even if it's not quite the outcome you expected it to be, having a go at it and going along that journey, I think will help you learn and realize a lot about yourself, but also the kind of people who respond to that, and then where you then take those conversations, whether they become clients or they're not quite the right fit, or, you know, I think it's just kind of have a go, but most importantly, have some fun with it, because then it makes it a lot easier to do. I think it's, yeah, people put a lot of energy into stuff they really don't enjoy, and it baffles me.
Yeah. I think, yes. I guess the question for you guys listening at home is like, what situations can you put yourself in where you won't know how to cope with it? Because I've got this podcast, and I figured that I'm a much more, I don't know, coach, like funny, like a better person in all different ways if I have to think on my feet. So podcast is a great vehicle for me. Whereas someone who's better with the singing performative type thing, do you want to do singing videos or karaoke on YouTube? I don't know. It's like, no, okay, maybe not. So yeah, I guess I picked a medium like with the podcasting, with the audio stuff, because it isn't something I know anything about. And I like the person who shows up there when he doesn't know quite what he's doing. And I also like seeing him when he thinks he can prepare for it, because you can hear the difference in the guy, the serious guy, when he shows up.
It's not so much doing singing videos for me. It's about understanding that I can be a really serious person, and I can be a joyous person, and I can be a generous person, and then sometimes I'm just someone who has to be in my kitchen doing karaoke. So it's not necessarily the literal, right now I need to show up on YouTube doing karaoke. It's the appreciation that we're human beings. And you're making me think of that thing in comedy, because comedy is a science, and there's an amazing book that I read and then recommended to Chris, and I don't know if you finished it. I'm not sure if even I finished it, but I kind of got the idea, and it's called Humour, Seriously, and it's a really nice breakdown of the fact that, like, humour is a brilliant art, and there's, for example, moments in comedy where all that's happening is that somebody very quickly identifies with something that the comedian is saying. The comedian has managed to talk about something really banal, but something that nobody ever talks about, but which everyone, when they hear about, is like, oh my God, that thing. Like I'm thinking of Ross Noble. I think a few months ago, Chris and I were exchanging who our favourite comedian is and sort of almost trying to work out why that person was funny to us. And I think I referenced this one thing to you, Chris, which is a sketch from like Ross Noble from like 20 years ago, where he goes into it. I think he's unemployed or something and bored. I might have made that narrative up, by the way, but he goes into something like Greg's or a bakery and amuses himself by finding faces in muffins. And he does this sketch where he's like, there's a face, next muffin, there's a face, next muffin, and literally that's the sketch. And it's so, I was just about to swear, funny.
Yeah.
Because it's so weird and banal, and yet you can kind of imagine doing it. And I think that brilliant marketing is also about sort of putting something out there that seems not necessarily that profound, and yet people are like, oh yes, 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 you know, and there's something about that that's really connecting. So maybe for me it's a case of thinking, what about being somebody that likes doing karaoke is what I want to be talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm mindful of the time, so
you can't make this crowdcast finish on me because it's not about me.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I was going to say we're going to end the conversation by asking Chris the question we ask all of our guests, which is, which coaching question that you ask either yourself or people you coach in your practice would you ask about marketing?
Oh my goodness. What I put it in the document, didn't it? I should have checked. It was something around what seriousness, wasn't it? What you're taking seriously about it. What you're getting hung up at. This a coach would never do this. Listen to this bumbling attempt at a question. Is it? What are you taking seriously right now? Something like that, maybe. I don't know. Is that too much on message, Francis? Were you hoping for something else a little bit edgier?
No, I just had a really cringe moment, which is I didn't want this event to end where I realise I've talked too much. So I don't care what you say as long as you're the last person to talk.
Well, the question I'm always asking of myself in coaching session is, why are you talking? That's always at the back of your head. Why are you talking? And then you just stop talking. So why are you talking? Not you, Francis, but why? Why are you talking?
So maybe that question around marketing is, why are you talking? Why are you putting this out? What's going out there? That's what I would hear from that question. Is like, and then maybe the other, thinking back to your previous response, it's like, well, is being serious about a podcast stopping you doing a podcast? You know, like why are you so serious about doing a podcast? That could be a really good prompt. I think I think I might ask myself that a bit more.
There's something about intention in there.
Why are you?
Why are you? Yeah. There's something about intention. Why am I sharing this? Why am I saying this? Why am I asking this? You know, what's behind this? Because that can often inform like the tone of your voice, the tone of your writing, and everything. Like what do I really want to know here? What am I really curious about? That's always a good one.
There you go. Yeah. Excellent.
And why are you paying any attention to anything I've got to say?
There we go. That is the question to ask. I'm going to paste into the chat for everybody your socialness, your Twitters and your LinkedIn for people to connect and follow if they should wish to do so. So is there? Yeah, thank you very much for joining us, Chris. It's been really good fun.
Thank you. Some good questions there. Thanks for paying attention. It's nice.
It's good fun, wasn't it?
I was just trying to find your answer, but you kindly... Chris is very organised, and we asked him this in advance, and he had to think about it.
The serious guy turned up.
I think the serious question was a good serious question, though.
Yeah. I don't want to denigrate him. He's useful. He gets stuff done, but sometimes, you know, he's
a bit
of a buzzkill. Yeah.
No, you're not alone. Your problem is not that you're serious. It's that you think you're serious and you're on your own with it.
Probably. Thank you.
We
I
love
love you
Chris.
too. And I love you all at home watching. Thank you, Lucy. Thanks for your question, Rich.
Thanks everyone for listening.
Yeah, thanks everyone for chipping in.
Excellent. Thanks very much for watching, everybody. If you want to join the next conversation that we are running, then just click in the little crowdcast thing at the top, and there's loads more events coming up. You can join lots more conversations, so do register for a few of those if you'd like to. If you want to carry on the conversation, then do come and join us over in the community. There's a big button at the bottom you can click to join the community, or you can check out our website also to learn more and join there. So thank you very much, everybody, for listening and watching, and we'll see you next time. See you, everybody.
See you next time.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.